Right, guys, welcome to Bear Strong's YouTube channel. This is the first of this series. I haven't decided a name yet of what I'm going to do or what I'm going to call it. It's going to be something like Bear Strong, Strongman Talks, something along them lines. But I've decided to kick it off with a good friend of mine, Dave Warner, who has competed at World's Strongest Man, has had a fantastic strongman career, and is now well known for being on the scenes of Giants Live and, of course, refereeing that 500 kilo deadlift. Thanks for calling, Dave, and thanks for agreeing to be the first to take the hot seat.
No, my pleasure, Chris. So go easy on me.
Well, hey, see, before we get stuck in and start talking about strongman, before Dave Warner discovered strongman, give us a bit of an idea of sort of who you were, what you were at, what direction sort of life was going into, just up until the point that you sort of found the strongman sport.
Well, all happened a little bit kind of by accident, really. I've always had a fascination with strength training, bodybuilding, that kind of thing. And just my biggest thing was going to the gym, training, a bunch of lads around me, and just enjoying the positives that brings. And I got to the stage where people were saying to me, you should compete. And I didn't really know what that meant. And they were talking about bodybuilding because I had a bit of size on. I was looking okay, I suppose. But I came from a place where there weren't many, well, there was none that I knew of competitive bodybuilders. So it was a kind of an unknown territory. And on the back of that, a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, took me to a bodybuilding show. And I didn't know what to expect. I was just mesmerized by it, just had never seen anything like it in my life before. And I really enjoyed the experience, and that kind of stuck the hook in and made me train harder, and didn't really decide to have a go at bodybuilding competition until 1993, and competed actually in Northern Ireland. I'd just moved over here for a short period of time to do some work, and I managed to compete in NABA as a novice. There's only two of us in it, but I managed to come first out of two. So I got my first bodybuilding win. But it took me a long time to get back onto the stage for bodybuilding. I didn't really feel big enough, conditioned enough. I looked at the other guys and I didn't look anything like them. They were flipping phenomenal.
So you definitely, because you still carry on to take the do with NABA in Northern Ireland. You definitely still have a big passion for the sport of bodybuilding. Like, what was it that won strongman over in terms of competing in strongman? Obviously, still a big fan of watching bodybuilding. But what for you sort of made strongman win, if you know what I mean, when it came to deciding which?
Yeah, two things really. I'd always been fascinated with strongman. I think I grew up in a small village and then in the countryside, and it was always everything was a test of strength. Who could chop the biggest logs, who could carry the biggest tree, who could, all that. It was just a big alpha fest. You know what I mean? Growing up for me, which I enjoyed. I can't complain about it. It was fine with me. Always watched World's Strongest Man on the TV. Always thought that's amazing, but those guys have come from another planet. I could never do that. They're something completely different to me. And during my bodybuilding career, I met a guy called Mal Kay. His wife was competing at the same time I was in some of the same shows, and he stood out in the audience because he was just such a massive guy, 6'3", 22 stone, built like an absolute tank. Looked different to the bodybuilders, looked a lot bigger than all of them, to be fair. And we became friends, and he begged me to come and have a go at some strongman training because that's what he did. And he eventually got me after a few months after my last competition. I went and had a go, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I love the intensity of the training, the challenge of the training. And he, unbeknown to me, he dropped my name in a hat for my first competition. And gave me about 6 weeks' notice to go and do a competition called Scarborough and East Coast Strongest Man, which, although it's a bit of a mouthful, it was a charity competition, but it was the starting point for quite a lot of strongman careers, my own included. Darren Sadler's, Mark Felix, Mark Westerby,
right.
Steve Brooks competed there. That wasn't the start of his career; he was fairly well up the ladder when he did that. But a lot of guys, Eddie Elwood did it. Some real good athletes. And I came second. And it was a big shock to me to come second. But when I was competing, I just wanted to win. All I could think about was winning. But you know what it's like, you know, that urge to win.
Yeah.
And suddenly looked down the line of the guys that I'd beaten, because there's 18 guys in that competition. And the guy that beat me was Mal Kay, the guy that had sort of put me under his wing and coached me. So it was only right, really. It would have been a bit of a kick for him if I'd have managed to beat him in his first, you know, the first showing of his protege.
Yeah.
But when I looked down the line, there was guys that had competed on TV in Britain's Strongest Man, and I'd beaten them.
Yeah.
And that was a massive boost to my confidence. And I got a buzz out of that I never really got as a competitor out of bodybuilding. And I love the fact with Strongman that if I lift more than you, Chris, I beat you.
Yeah.
And I can't argue with that about you know, that's just a fact. You lifted it, I didn't. I lifted it, you didn't. I have to shake your hand whether I like it or not, and accept and beat. In bodybuilding, it's not quite so. And still now, there's always controversial decisions. And even as an official, I still feel controversy with people that I feel, you know, should have done better than they did. But I think that's part of the love I have for bodybuilding. It's something I personally found hard to accept as a competitor.
Yeah.
You know,
I haven't had any experience, obviously, competing in bodybuilding, but, you know, I've seen it with people in the gym getting ready for shows. And, you know, they're in a certain category, and you hear like all these different opinions of what's right and what's look, and it even fried my head for them. I was sitting thinking, you know, what way are you supposed to look for this category? You know, it seems to be very opinionated based, you know, and the same for myself. That's one thing that drew me to Strongman, is coming from a sports background and coming from a rugby background. I did feel that a lot of your success depended on who you are, where you come from. Definitely a lot of your chances of going forward, I felt that. But with Strongman, like, it didn't matter who you were, where you came from. If you're stronger than the boy next to you, you're stronger than the boy next to you, and that's that. You know, it's very fair and honest. And if you don't win, you only have yourself to blame. You know, if you do win, it's because you put the work in. If you don't, it's because you didn't put enough work in. You know, it's very pure and honest that way.
Yeah, I would. Everything you've said, that is probably exactly how I always felt about Strongman. I always found it was a very fantastic leveler. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's your first competition or your last competition, you still give it your all, and you have to give respect to the guy that comes out on top always.
So what was it like, you know, when did you say 1993 you first sort of ventured in around Strongman?
No, 1993 I did my first bodybuilding show. It was 1999 before I did my first Strongman. I was 30 or 31 years old.
What was the Strongman world like then compared to now?
Well, it was different. In some respects, I think it was better. And I don't mean any disrespect to any of today's athletes when I say that, because I think they're amazing. What guys are doing today is very humbling for guys like me. You know, I did the best I could and trained as hard as I could. And I see what some of the guys are doing now, and I feel like I never even started. You know, they're phenomenal. And I take my hat off and huge respect. I've always had a soft spot for the lightweight categories. It just amazes me that these 90 and 80 kilo men can shift such phenomenal weights. It's always made me gasp. Still does. But when my first big experience of the big show after coming second at Scarborough Strongest Man, was my friend Mal, who beat me, had already qualified for Britain's Strongest Man that year. So he went down to the heats, didn't expect to do that well, but made the final. And he rang me up and he says, "I made the final, Dave. I've a spare bed in my hotel room. If you want to come down. I could do with the support." So I booked a few days off work last minute, went down. It was at Alton Towers in those days. So we sat, so I went down and I sat with him, just held his bag really, you know, got his knee wraps ready and his elbow straps ready and his smelling salts out of the bag. And the buzz was amazing and I was totally addicted. All I could think of was, I'm not standing with a bag here next year. I'm in there. I'm doing this, and so I did. I went and I qualified at a very rapid learning curve. But one thing that happened to me, which I forgot, which I admitted there when I did Scarborough and East Coast Strongest Man, the first year I did it, we had a loading race to do. This was like a loading race like I'd never done before in my life. It was on the soft sands in Scarborough with kegs, and as soon as you pick one up, you got about 2 feet shorter because you just sank into the sand. And you were wading through the sand, and it was the most horrific event. And I think myself and Mal were the only guys that managed to finish the event, and I'd never felt as exhausted in my life. And the guy that was refereeing it was a guy called Rob Dixon, and he'd been number 2 in British. He won the British a good few years ago. In those recent years, he'd been number 2 behind Big Glenn Ross, and he also had been to Worlds and was in our area. He was the big man, you know. He was the best strongman in the area. And he came over and he goes, "Took some balls to do that, lad." He said, "What are you doing next weekend?" And I went, "Nothing. Why? You're training with me." And that was me and him, best training partner I ever had. He beasted me like I've never been beasted in my life, but I owe him a lot because I would never have got where I got without his input.
Yeah. So you went on to do. I don't know if I got the facts right here. But it was 5 times Ireland's strongest man. Is that right?
I was 4 times Ireland's strongest man. I declined. To be fair, the last time I could have competed and gone and defended my title. I had a few niggly little injuries, shoulders, hips. I was 41 years old at that stage, Chris. So, and I hadn't stopped. And what really killed me, and you know you've done this, I did UKs twice. And for an older man to do UKs who didn't have a massive amount of time to prepare and train, no. I always felt a lot of pressure on my shoulders because I'd had such a good career before that. I always felt like I had to go and make a decent showing of myself because I'd been to World's Strongest Man, so I couldn't go to UKs and not make it through the heats. It would have been a disgrace for me. I would have felt, you know, like I disgraced myself. So I always had to fight on. And that was always my goal, just to make the finals. And I made the finals. I was second in 2008 and fourth. I had a disaster in 2009, but I was fourth in 2009. But after doing those shows, what was it, 13 events in 2 days, 3 days, something like that. It took me at least 6 weeks to get over that. My body was in bits. I was absolutely wrecked. Yeah. And I had a problem with my shoulder, and I declined UKs. I tried to go and do the Masters, which had just started then, but wasn't allowed to do that. I didn't get extended an official invite to do it, shall we say. But I would have liked to have done the Masters because I think I could have won it. But that's just the truth.
Yeah, well, it's personal opinion too. Like, you know, definitely. I think you going into your 40s was still a very fit, very strong strongman. You know, even like you only really eased back in training like a couple of years ago. Like you still, what was it, 2 years ago we were at Scottish Fitness Expo. You know, and you were still pulling back deadlifts. Like you kept a lot of strength and a lot of fitness there. Like definitely, like I still think if you got your arse back into gear and give you 12 months, like, you know, you could fucking whip a few boys up, like, you know.
Well, that's nice of you to say that. I don't know.
The motivation to actually.
I've been honest with you, Chris. You know, given the right environment and you know, and I know you have to create the environment. I've set off a few times with the best intention, especially with the official strongman thing. You know, they do a world championship. We've done it in America for the past 2 or 3 years, and it's a fantastic show and some great names going to it. And I've qualified for that once or twice now, but I've never been able to follow through to go to it. And I can make as many excuses as I want, but the truth of the matter is, you know, I'm just a guy who has to work quite hard to make, you know, keep a roof over my head, and work that I was doing at the time was taking me away, and it was just not a priority for me to do it. If it took me back 10 years, I'd have changed my job. But I couldn't really do that, you know, at that moment in time. So
it's sort of showing respect as well for the sport, like, you know, like I think one of the questions you get asked a lot, like, no matter if you're a strong man at any level, people always ask you, or I get asked quite a lot, you know, when are you going to World's Strongest Man, or when are you getting the World's Strongest Man? And like me in my position now, the truth is, would I want to be the World's Strongest Man? Yes, but am I going to sacrifice what it takes in my life to get there? No. You know, my goals and intentions of ever getting the World's Strongest Man, they're not there anymore. Maybe they were when I was in my 20s. But now, because I know what it takes to do that, it's not a goal I would have anymore. And, you know, suppose the thought of going back and doing the Masters at official strongman, you know what it takes to go back and compete at a good level.
Yeah.
Showing respect for the sport and the other strongmen that are at that level. You have to balance what's, if it's worthwhile making that big adjustment in life.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you make a similar statement, but I've said it before. For me to go somewhere, to qualifying for something is one thing. Do an online qualifier. Those qualifying online events usually aren't bad for me because the events normally suit me quite well. Farmers, a little bit of overhead, some deadlift, they're all stuff I can do. And you start throwing the different events in there, those are the ones you've really got to get your teeth into and train hard for, to be the fastest, no mistakes for. And I would say, if I haven't got the time to put into that, to go there and be 100% of what I can be at my age, I don't deserve my place, and somebody else should go in it because somebody else has been working hard, and I put that work ethic in front of anything else. You know what I mean? Just going there because I'm qualified. I'd rather see somebody else up on that stage.
So, what was your World's Strongest Man experiences then? Like, what was the times you did make it to Worlds?
Well, time. You have to say time. I can't pluralise that, I'm afraid. I did.
Talk us through what it was like. Getting the World's Strongest Man and where it was at the time.
It was World's Strongest Man. I mean, you asked me a question I never really answered about how it's changed, and I'll just quickly cover what we were talking about there, because when I did Britain's Strongest Man went on the TV. It was so long ago, we didn't have all these cable and satellite channels that we can sit there, never watch anything but see a million different programs because there's so much choice. When we had it, there was 4, maybe 5 channels. The biggest channel being BBC One. We were on BBC One. We were on at 7 o'clock in the evening, which is still now prime time. And we had a series of shows and a final. So if you made it onto that format in those days, there wasn't any social media as such. There might have been, I can't remember what it was called now, but there was Friends Reunited or something like that. That was probably the only thing that was online at that stage, even if. But it was a great opportunity to go, and we did it like I said, the first one I went to as a spectator was at Alton Towers. The one I went to and competed in, both of them were at Butlins camps, one in Torquay, I think it was, or something like that, and the other one was in North Wales. And brilliant, we were well looked after, we were fed and watered, and there was after show parties, all that kind of stuff. You still hear me there, Chris, because you've frozen on the screen?
Yeah, I think we're still okay. Just got a bit of a freeze, but I think it's still recording, so keep her lit. It'll come back round. So we were talking about when you got the World's Strongest Man and what.
I was just saying about Britain's Strongest Man and the format of it, wasn't I?
Yeah, that's right.
So Britain's Strongest Man, the format of it used to be the same way World's Strongest Man is. Used to be a series of groups, which there was the top 2 made it through to the final, and then the final was an hour-long special on the TV. So in those days, like I say, we had 4 or 5 channels. We were on BBC One, primetime TV, and just millions and millions of viewers. I mean, you talk about 15 minutes of fame. You genuinely really did get it from that. People were, after I'd been on the Britain's Strongest Man, I can remember being stopped in the street, stopped in the gym, stopped in the supermarket. You soon forgotten, but for a little while afterwards, it was amazing how many people actually saw it. Probably sticks more in my mind because I'd never experienced that before, So, but it was big, and there was no professional, so to speak, athletes. Everybody had a job on top of what they did. Nobody made some of us were lucky enough to have some bits of sponsors and small stuff, and the stuff I had was like the local gym used to give me free supplementation, let me train in the gym and I run up to the shows for free and stuff like that. They bought me things like a pair of climbing shoes for pulling trucks and just help me out, you know what I mean? Yeah. But then the first year I did Britain's Strongest Man was in 2001. And it was all a bit of a shock. That was because it was 2000. I was there, stood watching, saying, "I'm going to be there next year," and I made it. And in my group, lucky me, I was drawn up against the reigning champion Glenn, another guy who haven't seen much of him since. I heard he'd been quite ill, but his son started doing a bit of strongman. A guy called Lane Snook. And he was the total polar opposite of what Glenn was. Glenn was there, this big, huge, static monster, statically the strongest strongman of the time. And for a big guy, could actually move not too bad as well. Lane was the opposite. He was like greased lightning, statically not so strong. So I thought, flip me, I've got to try and beat him at the static stuff and beat him at the fast stuff to be in the top two here. I knew it was going to be a challenge. And I managed to finish third in my group just by a point or something stupid like that. And because I was the highest scoring third place in all of the groups, they gave me the reserve slot for the final. I can remember chasing Bill Pittick round, who's an old name of Strongman. He torn the bicep in the heats. And I was just poking his bicep. You don't want to compete in the finals, Bill. You don't want to compete in the finals. Thinking it would be my chance to have a crack at the finals, but it took more than losing an arm for Bill Pittick. You'd have to chop his legs off, I think, to stop that man. He still competed and did quite well. So I had to sit out and watch the finals the first year. Second year, 2002, I competed an awful lot. There used to be a competition called Britain's Top 10, England's Strongest Man and all these. And I'd done really, really well. We had a UK's team challenge then, which was actually run by Rob Dixon. And we managed to win that, me and Rob. Which was a really, really heavy show, and it was a big booster for me because Rob was off his game the day of the show. He'd had a few personal problems and he was right off his game, so I had to step up and do better than I'd ever done in training, and I managed to do it, and we managed to fend off some amazing teams, you know. So that was a big boost for my my motivation. And after that, it was Britain's Strongest Man 2002. Sailed through the heats, made it into the final. Well, I say sailed through the heats. The worst thing about that year was I was I was grouped up with Glenn again, a guy called Adam Townsend, Simon Flint. I can't remember who else, but the worst guy that I could have had in there, Darren Sadler, one of my best pals, still my best pal now.
Was that not your own making as well?
It was Mal Kay's making. Mal Kay complained that he shouldn't be training with because we all trained together, me, Mal, Darren. We just started doing a bit of training with some other guys then, Eddie Elwood and Andrew Rain Stumpy. You know, all the best guys were sort of from the north then, and I was fortunate enough to be, ranked up as one of the top guys then. And that, we all came from the same area, so we all trained together. So we didn't want to be in the same group as each other. Finally, didn't care. And Darren was like the scariest little man you could compete against because he was only 17, 18 years old or something stupid like that. Not very big, but the strongest, fittest animal you've ever seen. And he was just, at that age, I remember him doing we did an Atlas stone carry and load onto a platform, and then a chain and anchor drag, massively heavy. And there was 3 people finished it in our group. I won it. I finished it. Glenn finished it, and Darren Sadler finished it. And he was, I don't know what he weighed, but he was probably about 15 stone wet through. If he was even that, he was so small, but just so tenacious. So you didn't want him in your group because he was a guy just always snapping at your heels, snap, 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 snap. But probably losing out that year was the biggest motivation for him as well, because he never looked back after that. He just smashed everything he did. But I'm lucky enough, made the finals. I was leading after the first day of the finals in 2002. The second day was a disaster. They put a squat in the event. Not that I'm a bad squatter, I'm okay at squatting, but it was a Citroen relay van on a pivot, like a seesaw. So at the top, you felt like you could have pressed it. As soon as you started moving down with it, it felt like it was a hydraulic ram pushing down your spine. And the 2 biggest squatters of the day, anywhere, probably in the world at that stage, was Glenn Ross and Andy Rains. And they didn't have a they didn't. It was always who's the best squatter. So they were in the final squatting. They'd both done 18 reps with this thing. I bust myself. Right. People thought I was being smart. I was not being smart. I did 10, but one got disallowed, so I got 9, and I came second with half the reps that they both did. Neither of them boys could walk afterwards. Yeah. Nor could I, actually. And the next event after a squat was stones in the middle of the thing, and I can remember. I was head to head with Glenn, and I was thinking, I've got to beat him. And I went in, and I had thump. You hear the stones going up, dump, dump, and you're waiting to hear one hit the floor because you know the guy next to you's failed. And I heard 2 thumps, and I looked round, and Glenn was laid with a stone between his legs, with his legs in the air. He'd gone complete, but his legs had gone. We were all the same, all in the same boat. People don't see that on the TV, but my goodness, we were a mess. And I ended up finishing 4th that year. And I should have been right up there. I was disappointed in myself. But the guy that won it was a guy called Mark Iliff, a lightweight competitor again, very fit, very strong, very fit. But the event suited him because for some strange reason that year, there wasn't a press in the final and there wasn't a deadlift in the final, which didn't suit me. But, I did the best I could with what we had. But Mark, it suited. People say the scores would have been the other way around. But if you look at the scores, Mark won by a fair amount. There would have been a discrepancy probably between maybe my place and 3rd and maybe 2nd and 3rd because we were all a lot closer. But we went on from there. I got the invitation to World's Strongest Man, which was something I hadn't even thought about really. It was an idea, but it wasn't really a plan. We got the invitation to go and compete in Kuala Lumpur. Right. And all the greats were there. Well, I can't say that's not right. The greats of that era were there, and I'm talking about Magnus Samuelson, Sven Carlson, Marius Pudzianowski, Jani Virtanen, Marius Pudzianowski, Jarek Dimek. The list goes on and on and on and on. Heinz Olisch and all these guys that were massive names in the day. You know all of those guys, I'm sure you grew up watching those guys doing the stuff on the TV. Probably sitting on your potty at your age, but anyway. But it was a phenomenal, just to walk in. I remember walking into the meet and greet room when we all sort of had a big athletes meeting, and I've never felt like walking, like one of these kids walking into Willy Wonka's factory where everything makes you feel teeny weeny. I just felt like the floor was going to suck me up. But then I'll never forget Magnus Samuelson, who was one of my idols. I always loved the way he looked, the way he conducted himself, the way he competed, and the way he was. I always thought he was a phenomenal guy. And when I was lucky enough to meet him, he was even better in real life than he was on the TV. He came over and shook my hand, said he'd watched my videos, was glad I wasn't in his heat, and made me feel a bit better, you know what I mean, and sat with me through the meeting. And we never really kept in touch, but we speak as he comes to some of the Giants Live shows now, and lovely man. But I didn't really crack those, to be honest.
What you hoped they would be.
Well, they say sometimes you should, beware sometimes of meeting your idols. And not him. He was every bit as good as I could have hoped. Just a total gentleman. Really, really nice guy. You want to see him now as well. I don't know if you've seen him recently. He looks like he could go and do World's Strongest Man again. He's in some shape. He's 54 or something like that. But he looks unbelievable. Lean, tall. He won. He did that in Sweden. They do a dancing show, like this dance, Strictly.
Oh, yeah.
And he won that. He won that over there and made a little bit of a career for himself afterwards, doing a bit of dancing and shows and stuff like that. So he's still a big name, and he acts in some of these Viking sagas, movies, and series on TVs.
He has a look for it, like.
Yeah.
So from going to World's Strongest Man to no, I'll give you this question first because I think this is an interesting question. I don't know if you've seen on YouTube, you see different things on YouTube, but they're taking a past strongman and a current strongman, and they're sort of eliminating the progress in time and putting them together to see who would have won if they were competing at the same time era.
God, I hope nobody's doing that with
me. So what I'm saying is, if you had an opportunity to compete against any other strongman, both in the same time area, today's strongman, past strongman, whatever, which strongman would you actually have liked to have went head to head with and, you know, competed alongside?
That is a really tough question. I think the guys out there now, you've got the phenomenons, these huge guys, and I think I would love to have competed against someone like Brian Shaw. Would be amazing. Yeah, to see what you could do against a monster like that. Or, you know, I mean, because you stand next to Thor, you know, he's already beaten you. He's like the ultimate male specimen on this planet. He's such a huge, phenomenal person. But
there's that photo of you with Thor that I'll have to put in. Picture of you before, isn't there?
I'm hiding behind his arm, I think. Yeah.
Europe. So there was a picture at the hotel, I think, in Europe's.
Yeah. Everybody said it was Photoshopped, but it went up in seconds, that picture. It was not Photoshopped. I wish it had been.
I'll remember to put it in at this part. But yeah, I get what you mean, you know, because there is, I think, like, strongmen have always been big. They have what I call the freak factor, and I mean that in a good way, you know, that where you are sort of looked upon in sort of that circus freakish way, you know, where your shape and your size is very intriguing for people, and it's always been that way against the majority of strongman. But like now so today, you know, a strongman's development, it's getting even bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, you know what I mean? And the guys are just. It used to be years ago that I remember that if somebody was tall and they came out, you were like, "Oh, they'll be a shit deadlifter and they'll be a shit presser." But now that's just totally disappeared.
People like that anymore, do you?
It used to be you could judge people's height and the sort of their shape and their build as to where their strengths and weaknesses would be, and now it just doesn't seem to play that big a factor.
It's very true, is that, and I think, you know, I didn't say Eddie's name in my sort of guys out because I actually did manage to do a competition against Eddie. It's one of the last shows that I did, and Darren Sadler, for one reason or another, was unable to compete in World's Strongest Man, and it was fairly short notice, and he'd asked because he couldn't go. He said, "Look, can I run a small show? I'll invite the best guys of the rest, and the best man can have my place at World's Strongest Man." And they agreed to this because there wasn't enough notice to invite another or qualify another British kind of guy, you know. So he ran a competition, and there was Rob Frampton, Eddie Hall, myself, Ken Nowinski, what do you call Gary Gardner, who else? All the guys that were just sort of sitting under the radar, because you guys like Lawrence and Lawrence and Terry and people like that were already going. So I managed. That's the first time I met Eddie. Didn't really like him at first. I thought he was a bit rude, but I think it was maybe a nerve factor, you know, because I'm pretty friendly with Eddie now. I get on great with the guy. I like the guy a lot. But he for me is a guy. Even then it was a freaky deadlifter. He deadlifted like I want to do an interval through more. You know, it was just a joke. The pressing was the same, but he couldn't do the yoke. He couldn't do the farmers, and he went home before the stones. A bit of through his. I won't say through his teddies out of his prongs. I might chin me next time I see him. But he obviously was having a bad day and had enough because he knew he hadn't done enough to do what he needed to do. But for that guy to be not good at those events, to be world class at those events, to me is what strongman's all about as well. Because he always says, I'm not genetically gifted. He maybe is in shoulders and back. Yeah. When it comes to lifting, carrying and all the rest of it, I don't know what his stones were like in those days, but he has trained and perfected what he's done. And that's why I'll always have a massive amount of respect for Eddie Hall, regardless of there's people out there who are turning him a bit Marmite now. They love him or they hate him. I love the guy. I think he's brilliant. I think what he's done for strongman is phenomenal, you know.
I just see him like, you know, like, you know, I wouldn't, like, Eddie has so much respect for Eddie and what he's done for the sport. You know, I think he's a smart guy. He's been a smart strongman for a lot of years. He's now a smart businessman. He has his head screwed on. You know, 110% take a hat off to the guy. That, you know, he's done amazing things and continuing to do amazing things for the sport. But I can also equally understand why people don't like him. See what I mean? I could get why people don't like him.
But I think, to be brutally honest, I probably works for him both ways anyway. You know what I mean? Because you know, everybody secretly loves a bad boy as well. There's no you know, you can't have a good story without a hero and an enemy. You know what I mean? And either way around, you're going to look at the story. You've got to have both. So whatever, you know. But
well,
that's
talking of Eddie Hall, like obviously his historical 500 kilo deadlift. It's a huge topic point at the moment. It's huge. You know, there's a lot of, because Thor's come to challenge it.
Yeah.
But you were the guy that was sitting in the seat in front of him for the 500 kilo deadlift. I was in the audience watching, and the atmosphere in the audience was just something else. But, you know, talk us through that day, the day of the 500 kilo deadlift. You know, what was it like from hotel to the stadium?
The story really started the night before when they had the athletes meeting. That was important, because I rarely comment in all the stuff that goes on social media. You know, I don't put my 10 penneth in. I know a lot of the facts because I was there. I heard everything said. I saw everything and the way it was managed. You know, there was, you know, people made out like it was set up for Eddie and all the rest of it. A 500 kilo deadlift just set up for you, yeah, it's fine. You know, just stick it in the bar and I'll tell you when I'm ready. You know, that's how it works, yeah. But that wasn't how it worked at all. The guys that were challenging for that lift, there was Benedict Magnuson there, there was Jerry Pritchett there, Thor was there. Those guys were all sat in the same room, and they discussed and they debated how they were going to run it, what the increments were going to be, and how that competition was going to pan out. And it was all agreed. There was a bit of bum, but that was just the way it always is in those meetings, you know. So that anybody that sort of wants to tell you a story that it was done a different way, in my opinion, isn't really telling the story as I saw it. I was sat there not knowing if I was going to even be refereeing it at that point. I didn't know if Darren was going to choose to do it. Darren, I think, was so sidetracked with distracted with everything else that was going on. He wanted somebody that could just focus on the job in hand, which was given to me.
But the actual experience of it, you know, I think that the shows were getting bigger and bigger from then. You know, I think they matured maybe for that period of 3 to 4 years. You know, but I personally think that the 500 kilo deadlift one was a huge turning point for arena strongman sports, because it got the 10,000 people in, it brought an atmosphere that you never ever seen before, and then everything that's then has kept growing and kept getting bigger. You know, like, what was it actually like, you know, being the referee of such a historical moment?
Well, I can remember going backstage and speaking to all the athletes, and I said the same thing to them all. I said, as you lift here, I said, I'm not going to keep you hanging around at the top with the up and coming weights, because I don't want anybody busted. You know, we're trying to break a record here. But I'd said to them all, I said, when we get to the 500, you're going to have to hold it. I don't want any controversy. And seeing the boys, because I was in and around the back there watching them warm up for it and things like that, and the atmosphere backstage, it was electric. You could feel the hair standing up on the back of your neck. It was just immense. And then when I sat in my chair, literally, I was just, what weight was on the bar is irrelevant. I can only referee the deadlift. Yes, I felt the pressure, but I got a bit animated with my down signal, but it was so noisy. And there was so many people that stood at the side of me with cameras and everything like that. I couldn't even hear myself say good lift. You know what I mean? And I dropped the hand and shouted good lift at Eddie. And Eddie looked right at me. Then he was looking around like that. And I put the hand up and dropped it again. I said, good lift, because I didn't know if he'd heard me. Blood coming out of his nose and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, you'd seen yourself, he nearly passed out on the lifts going up to that. So, you know, I knew he was under extreme pressure. And it was just new territory. We didn't know what was going to happen. So it was very nerve-wracking. And we all, Darren and I think Rob Frampton came in from the sides, and I ran around the back, and I held Eddie. He was completely out, and he's a big man to hold. And I can remember thinking, well, you get them straps off, because my legs are going to go in a minute. There's going to be two of us lying on the floor. And then he came to, and he went, get off me. So I think he actually swore. So I was the first person he swore at after he did the 500 deadlift as well. But no, it was a phenomenal day. And even to see Benedict and Jerry lifted off the floor. Yeah. Benedict was ill all day. Nobody saw that. He was backstage throwing up, couldn't keep anything down, not even water. He was really, really, really desperately ill going in to do those lifts. So it might have been a different story if he hadn't been, was unfortunate to fall ill just before. And Jerry, he took the hamstring, but I think he was moving pretty well when his hamstring went pop. You know what I mean? He's who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. But so obviously, like, I don't want to get into the politics of the whole Thor thing, but you know, I would be pretty confident the Thor would pull the 501 from his training and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He has said that based on how many subscribers he gets to different platforms, he said in interviews that he's going to go up to 530 kilos. You know, do you think he's originally said 520, but he has said 530?
I don't know, because I was of the opinion, because everybody's going, oh, why is he just going for 501?
Yeah,
it's bigger than 500. You know, maybe he's deadlift for 370 before the 371. It's now 371. It probably won't go up anymore. It's all I could do. He can do more, but how many opportunities is he going to get for another big payday to break his own record? I don't know. That's a possibility. So Zadruna's got several paydays out of breaking the log lift record. Very, very smart. Was getting a pittance compared to what these guys are getting for these big deadlifts. So there is that factor as well. And he's done very well for himself as Thor. He seems to be very switched on from a business perspective. He's very well supported by sponsors and people that seem to want to lift him up to the next, well, whatever the next level is for that man. I mean, he's just a phenomenon. And I was really interested to hear Darren Sadler's interview, because really, if you think about it, people like Darren from a business perspective probably stand to lose the most, because they can't put that in their arena because he's doing it in his own gym. His total outlook on it was totally positive. You know, he said, why not? If the timing's right now, he can't do it anywhere else. Let him go and do it. This is what the sport's all about, moving forward. Let's not stand still just because of the coronavirus or a different opportunity. Let's move forward. And I thought that was a very, very healthy and constructive attitude. And I share it. I hadn't really, I kind of thought to myself, it's a shame. But then when you think of it in the situation we're in at the moment, because you were there when Eddie lifted 500, for that record to be broken in the same environment, when that would have been shared by 10,000 people in a moment they'll never forget, it's not the same watching it on a screen.
Yeah. No, 100%. When is it on? Is it tomorrow night or is it next weekend?
I think it's tomorrow.
Weekend, isn't it? So just to wrap things up, Dave, I always say, where is the question? If everything that, you know, your strongman career, and it's something I'm going to do at the end of all the interviews, is for each guy to sort of give thanks back to that main character of inspiration, that main person that brought them in to the sport, or that inspired them to get into the sport, or that helped them. You know, who was your biggest inspiration? Who was?
But the person I would probably thank the most, I mean, Rob Dixon was a great influence for me, because he showed me what a strongman needed to be at world level. He showed that, but he didn't go easy on me, and I think I helped him as much as I helped him as much as he helped me, because he needed somebody competent to train with. Because the things I was better at him at, which weren't many, he was pushing forward, so he was always trying to beat me at things like farmer's walk, grip holds, things like that. And the things like, he was always a great presser, and you know, he was just a fitness wise, you know, for loading or anything like that, he was a freak. So we bounced off each other. So Rob, I owe a debt of gratitude to. But the person, which won't surprise many people, and they know the friendship, the relationship I've got with him, is Darren Sadler. Because Darren has stood by me through thick and thin, not only in his strength career, but in my life, been a great friend. And he's always included me and a lot of other people who were part of his strongman career, strongman past, in this developing Giants Live movement, you know, and I'm very grateful for that. He's always made me feel part of the team. And when I was getting ready for World's Strongest Man, nobody wanted to train with me, because nobody else was training for anything. So I was on my own. he trained with me twice a week, every week in his yard, went and set stuff up, made stuff for me to train with, to do weight for height, things I didn't have, went out his way. And that to me is a true committed effort. And we've had one fallout in all our lives, me and Darren, and he never lets me forget it. He reminds me of it every time we see each other. So, but he's done so much for the sport as well, for everybody who loves strongman.
Yeah.
And I know there's other people doing other things and doing them very well, and I wouldn't take anything away from that. I still think he's done what he's done with Giants Live the best, and that's where my heart lies with Giants Live and those shows. Although I still watch all the others as well, because all my mates are competing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
World Ultimate Strongman, Strongman's Champions League. I'm stuck to all of them. You know what I mean? I'm just a fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So, like, we talked about your, we talked a good bit, you know, about your journey and through strongman, bodybuilding, now refereeing like the biggest strongman shows in the world. You know, what are you like? You have a hell of a CV there, but you know you're currently doing online coaching, one-to-one coaching, and bits and pieces as well.
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through sort of that as to what you're at now. Like, obviously, we're still going to see you at official strongman, at refereeing, and Giants Live and bits and pieces. We'll always see you, but there. But on the background, what else are you at?
Well, anybody wants to have a look at what I'm at. I mean, I have a little setup. I call it Renegade Strongman. We run a few shows. I tie in with the official strongman scene, which is gone very quiet at the moment because of the coronavirus and everything like that. There's nothing really much they can do this year. But I have always tried to put shows on. I was living here in Northern Ireland, qualifiers for our 80s, 90s and 105 to get them through to the next level at official strongman. We were supposed to have the girls going ahead this year. It's not going to happen just because of the situation that we're in. We had just before all this event, you were there, you helped me a great deal and refereed for me at the New Blood. We had 91 new people coming into the sport, competing. It was just the most amazing day of strongman for me. And those are the people I like to help. I like to help people that are at the beginning of their journey and are focused to get to a certain point. I find it very satisfying, just giving people a bit of help. And I do help a few people with online coaching. When the gym opens again, I'll be doing one-to-one again in there, or small groups, based up in Ballymoney. But if anybody wants some help from a good starting point, from somebody that's had a fair amount of experience, I think I could make a difference to most athletes.
Yeah, no, well, 100%, no doubt about it. Like, with the career that you've had, the knowledge that you've built, the knowledge that you're still building, because at the end of the day, like, you're working with a coach there who 3, 4, 5 times a year, whatever it is surrounded by the best strongmen in the world.
Mm-hmm. And they don't get any peace from me. Tell me that. I'm a nightmare.
So it's not just a matter of your past, it's a matter of, like, there's still plenty of new stuff filtering in there. You're still finding out, because you've done it with me, and you've tipped me off this and this, and advised this and this, and it helped me a lot in the past. Like, so
thanks.
Definitely comes highly recommend it for myself. But I'll make sure that in the description and stuff there'll be a link to your Instagram and bits and pieces.
But I think as well, guys like us, Chris, regardless of there's a bit of an age gap between us, but there's always that element of, when at the days you've had a chance to come up, we've done a bit of training together. I've always done really well because I'm training with a guy that I have a lot of respect for, and that makes a difference to me. And if I'm deadlifting you, I'm thinking, flip me, I've got to do well here because big Chris coming up. It's not one of the guys at the gym that maybe can only pull a lot less than that, and they see somebody pull 300 kilos and they think, wow, you expect to see 350. You're just like, I'm not going to stay for the end of this. You know what I mean? So we kind of push each other on, and I think that's the same with strongman, because I did a refereed a competition. I was invited over to referee in Sweden, and Johannes Astro's competition, the Giants Live that ran over there. I love that show. I'm so sorry it doesn't take place anymore. May it be resurrected sometime soon. It was brilliant. And he arranged a little dinner after the show, and the guys were given the handshakes and the prize monies, and he used to say a few words to thank everybody. And he said something that always stuck with me. And he said, the thing is with strongman, he said, if you sit back and really think about it, because it's not like anything else. It's a brotherhood. And I think it genuinely is. I think everybody, you know, there's always the characters, there's always a few clashes, but deep down there's that brotherhood, that familyness, and that want to help people. You know, I don't want to go to a competition and compete against you and you bomb out on something that was embarrassing. I want you to push me to the last kilo. Yeah. That's how I want to win. You know what I mean? And I think that's how the sport is, and that's one of the things that I've always loved about Strongman. You know.
Yeah, it's the you do, because I think it's because it's such a individual sport, and it's such a thing. You know, it's a lonely sport, and it's a thing you do on your own, and you just know. Like if I went out against a log press with whoever, and I know that they fucked up or they made a mistake in the log, or they weren't at their best that day, and I end up winning it, you still know in the back of your mind, because it's such an individual sport, because you know what it takes to win. Yeah. There's no bluffing yourself.
No.
You know, but when you do go out and you beat somebody and you know that was 100% of their best,
yeah,
then you know you've won, and the trophies, anything like that doesn't matter. You just know that I fucking got him there. Like, you know, I won that.
Definitely, and it's that alone as well that propels the sport forward. That is what makes it. The weights get bigger, the objects get heavier. You know, it's just that is just what makes it more difficult going forward, but makes the athletes better, because you know the Atlas stones aren't going to get smaller, the logs aren't going to get lighter, the deadlifts aren't going to get lighter. It's just the way it is. You know, that it's only progressing one way. It's going to get harder, heavier, and faster. You know.
Well, Dave, look, thanks very much for coming on, man. It's been a good first interview to get this here rolling, and when all this here COVID-19 or whatever, you know, when all this is done, we'll have to make sure to pencil in the diary to get them training sessions in.
Food and training, or training and food. You don't mind which order.
Probably more food than it is training. Right, man, you take care of yourself. Stay safe.
Good, mate. Thank you very much.
Again, bro.
See you soon.